Hey UConn Nation, it's KK Arnold here. If you're looking for the latest UConn women's basketball content, go subscribe to Listen Up to Phil and Ryan. Go Huskies!
Phil and Ryle, and listen up and Ryle on this episode on this beautiful Wednesday, the first day of October, Rye. Baseball is in full swing, the playoffs, as we have some exciting news that just dropped about half an hour ago. Thanks to Joe Morelli, staff writer for the CT Insider. Rye, this one says UConn women's basketball team selected as number one overall seed in ESPN's early NCAA bracketology. So, Ryan, it's looking good. It's looking like the country, the big media outlets are favoring UConn right away, right away to go back to back. But I want to hear your case on this one because I'm always bringing this stuff to the table for you and everybody else. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. But, Rye, question for you is, does it matter to you at all specifically? Because you've seen the comments in the past. We've covered this team, what now, 4 or 5 years in a row. They say, well, we don't care about the poll, the AP poll, or the bracketology. So, how much does this really, truly mean?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it doesn't really mean that much, right? You guys know I'm not really a huge fan of the AP poll rankings and the bracketology and all that stuff. It's nice to discuss and come on here and talk about it and see what you guys have to say in the comment section. But I think it's just based on how we do during the season. There's not really much to look at all the rankings. You still have to go out there and do the job throughout the whole entire season to be able to keep that number one spot. But it certainly is a good sign and a positive way of looking at it. Is I think UConn, as the defending national champions, I think they deserve to be up there at that number one overall seed in the really really early bracketology for March Madness for this upcoming season. But we're still over top of the teams like South Carolina, Texas, USC. Who I saw the news the other day. I believe Juju Watkins is officially out for this whole entire upcoming season, which is a pretty big loss for them, unfortunately. And a couple other great teams too, like Notre Dame and a couple other schools, Tennessee, who I believe UConn has to play this year. But there's a lot of positive news that we received, and we went over that open facility practice that UConn had the other day. We're receiving a lot of good news about some of the new faces: Kaylee Heckel, Sarah Williams, Bianca Quinones looks good in front of the teammates and coaches off to the side doing some drills as she was quite a late arrival to this team, but she's warming up to this season as well. Of course, we're getting Ayanna Patterson back from injury. So there's definitely a lot of positives, and I guess this kind of adds to it as UConn is I would assume going to be ranked number one in the AP poll whenever that comes out for this new season. And of course, the committee, I guess, recognizing the Huskies as the number one overall seed. Of course, you're talking about the vocal leaders for this team, possibly being AZ Fudd, Caroline Ducharme, and Sarah Strong as well. I heard some reports about Sarah Strong really growing up a lot as her second year arrives for UConn. So I think, like we've been talking about throughout the whole entire all season, so many positives we're hearing about this team, and that certainly adds to that. This news certainly puts the cherry on top, I guess, being the number one overall seed.
I'll let you bring something up too. Well, you talk about being number one team. They're favored to be number one team in the country. I'm curious about the AP poll when that opens up. All right, what do you think about this one? Number one player on the team, because we went over this before. Since AZ Fudd has stepped up so much previously, I think when you look at Sarah Strong, let's just say everybody has an off night. Now that's unlikely for UConn, right? But against these ranked teams, these ranked opponents, if in fact they would happen to drop, I don't know, one, two, three, four, we're not going to even get up to five losses on the season. I don't think it's possible, but we'll see. Rye, do you always point that finger back at AZ Fudd? if matter of fact, slow night, slow start, fourth quarter lead, lost the game, is it always pointed back? Just this season specifically, is it always going to be pointed back? What did AZ Fudd do tonight? It's a team sport, I get it, but I think you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, well, I think with Paige Beckers leaving, I think Gino's kind of talked about it some so far in the off season, and when he was interviewed in a couple of those practices, that it's the team is kind of looking for a leader to step up. I think Gino kind of realizes that the team looks a lot different with some of these new faces, and certainly having Paige for the last 4 years out there on the court playing for UConn. Of course, she missed that whole entire season with that one injury, but in terms of playing 4 years for UConn and being the leader, being the voice out on the court, that's definitely going to take some time for somebody to fill those shoes in terms of a leader and a floor general out on the court. And it certainly does seem like AZ Fudd would be the one to step into those shoes and kind of fill the role of Paige Beckers. But like I mentioned before, I think AZ Fudd's more incapable of doing that, more than capable of doing that as the vocal leader. But I'm not so sure if AZ Fudd is the type of player to always be bringing the ball up the court. And of course, even last year, when of course Paige was still here, we saw KK Arnold still bringing the ball up the court for some of those possessions. So I think there's, in terms of this team for this year, I think there's going to be a lot of leaders in terms of who's bringing the ball up the court, who's organizing some of the plays, calling out the plays, making sure everybody's set up where they need to be, both on offense and defense. And I think Sarah Strong, it's going to be hard to follow up what she did last year, but I certainly think she can definitely become a more vocal leader out on the court on both sides of the ball as far as that goes. So I think there's a lot of different players that can chime in who have been under the system for the past 3 or 4, even 5 years when you talk about Caroline Ducharme. So I think there's going to be a lot of different players that step up into that Paige Beckers-esque role for this year.
All right, comments from the last video. Anthony says, guys, you're killing my ears. It's definitely Bjorn, not Bjorn. Please, pretty sure J is silent. Remember, Bjorn, Borg, tennis player. Check your pronunciation. I could be wrong, but don't think I am. Love you guys. Keep it up. And James said, wow, you both butchered her last name.
Yeah, that's certainly been something that we've definitely struggled with on the podcast. There's so many different names, and I know we've had that with it's either Jana or Jana Al Alfie. Yeah, so we'll definitely get better than that with the pronunciation of the different names.
Now, this is no excuse, Rob, but maybe if she becomes a Husky, we wouldn't have any issue. Let's go over to another one. The Nerd Comic Book. That sounds like a username that Dalton Stewart would use. They say, all I care about right now is the big O. That's all we need. I guess they're referencing the offense.
Yeah, it's certainly definitely important to have a great offense, but I think it for UConn it's always been the defense that starts things off for most of the games, and it's kind of what UConn relies on, in my opinion, is the defensive side of things, getting the steals, getting the turnovers, breaking out in transition. I think that's what's kind of sparks the UConn offense in a lot of these games.
The disruptive one, also, I'm surprised we don't have anyone. I think UConn is being extremely picky, but 0 recruits, and it is almost October 1. Well, today is, right? October 1 is a surprise. November signing period is right around the corner. Ducharme, Williams, and Fudd will leave, and probably 1 or 2 transfers. So I don't believe the notion that there is no room for recruits.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be room for recruits after this season. I do expect UConn to at least get 1 or 2 recruits for the next season. Maybe it does come, the announcements come in the next month or it could be throughout the whole entire season, but I definitely expect we're going to get the announcement of UConn getting at least one or two players in terms of recruits for the upcoming season. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of big shoes to fill with Caroline Ducharme, AZ Fudd, and Sarah Williams leaving this team next year.
All right, one more, Rye. Joseph Patty said, we only need two recruits, Olivia Vukosa and Jesse Robinson. That's what we need.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of great players still out there, and I know we talked about some of them during this off season. Three, four, maybe five different names that are in the top 15, or some of the ones that are ranked lower that UConn really likes to go after sometimes. The undervalued players that some of the teams skip over, and that UConn really recognizes their talent and gets them, and they turn out to be great players for this team. And even the players that are overseas that might not even make it to the top 100 in terms of recruits. But UConn goes out, finds these players, develops them, and they turn out to be great players for the Huskies.
Rye in the entire circle. I tell you this quote every year. In the entire circle of the year, there are no days so delightful as those of a fine October. Open up for business. Phil and Rye on Listen Up.